He said it so lightly that the words barely stirred the air, drifting across the living room like dust caught in the glow of the Christmas lights. No gifts for you, Mom. You need to learn a lesson. And then, God help me, he smirked. My only son standing there beside the tree, hands in his pockets, shoulders loose with confidence, as if he'd just said something clever. Something righteous. Something he was proud of. If your heart carries its own wounds, if the people you trusted have broken you, and you still want to hear that truth again, then know this. You are exactly in the right place. Just tell us your beautiful name, let us know which wonderful country you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe to this channel, so that these painful real-life stories, stories that touch the deepest corners of the heart, reach you on time. I felt myself go still, the way an old clock does when it finally winds down and the pendulum freezes in mid-swing. But I didn't answer, not then. Silence can sometimes protect a person better than any armor. The living room smelled of pine and cinnamon candles, the kind I'd been buying since before he lost his baby teeth. The same scent that used to make him giggle and say Christmas always smelled like cookies and tree bark. And there he stood now, 33 years old, telling me I didn't deserve a present. Not tonight. Not this year. Maybe not ever. But let me not get ahead of myself. You need to understand how a mother reaches a moment like that, because moments like that aren't born in a single sentence. They're grown slowly, year by year, like mold in a corner you keep forgetting to clean. The day had started almost tender. I woke to the soft patter of sleet against the kitchen window and the familiar ache in my knees that reminds me I'm not the young woman who once danced barefoot on fresh snow just to make him laugh. I put on my worn robe, the blue one with a tear in the pocket I still haven't mended, and shuffled toward the kettle. The house was quiet except for its little murmurs, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the hallway clock, the soft sigh of the heating vents. I opened the drawer where I keep my tea sachets and smiled at the lavender one resting on top. I save those for mornings when I need a bit of calm. Christmas Eve, as it turned out, was one of those mornings. The kettle gurgled as it heated, that funny little bubbling sound like it's trying to speak but still half asleep. Outside, a bright red cardinal perched on the feeder, shaking snow from its wings like a dog flinging off water. For a moment, everything felt normal, safe, familiar. But small cracks in peace usually show themselves early if you bother to notice. I saw the first crack when I stepped onto the porch to fetch the mail and realized the driveway was empty. My son's car wasn't there. It was supposed to be. He told me he'd be over early to help with the cooking. He said he'd promised his girlfriend they'd show up Christmas morning with everything perfect, like I was some backstage worker to prep his holiday performance. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. The sleet kissed my cheeks like cold little needles. I pulled my robe tighter and went back inside, thinking maybe he was just running late. Maybe he'd stopped to buy something. Maybe. Hope is stubborn. It sticks to your ribs even when you're full of reasons to let it go. A quiet dread settled in my stomach, but I brushed it aside and went on with the morning, wiping counters, kneading dough, humming a carol so softly I barely heard it myself. It wasn't until noon that the second crack appeared, a suitcase by the door. Not mine. His. He'd left it when he'd visited earlier in the week, claimed he packed some things because he wanted to crash here for a couple nights to make the holiday easier. I remember smiling, thinking how nice it would be to have him home again, even briefly. But seeing the suitcase now, untouched, unclaimed, waiting like an unanswered question, it tightened something around my heart. I opened it, just a little. His clothes were folded neatly, far too neatly for someone who packs quickly. There was a new sweater with the tag still attached. A cologne bottle barely used. And on the side pocket, peeking out like a shy secret, a small folded note. At first I thought it might be something sweet. A Christmas card. A thank you. Even now, I don't know why I hoped for kindness. It had been missing from him for a long while, slipping through our fingers like threads unraveling from an old scarf. But the note wasn't for me. It wasn't even written by him. It was from his girlfriend. 4 short lines that changed everything. Don't forget what we talked about. Remember, it's her money, not her. Be firm. She'll cave like always. We deserve this life. She owes us that much. I sat down right there on the floor, the suitcase open like a wound. I read the note again, and again, until the words blurred and my eyes filled with that hot, trembling sting I haven't felt since my husband died. Her money, not her. Funny how a sentence so small can feel like being split in two. People think betrayal arrives with sirens and thunder. No. It walks in quietly, wearing soft shoes. I stood up slowly, holding the suitcase for balance. My house felt suddenly colder, as if someone had opened a door I couldn't see. My breath shook. I closed the suitcase, placed it back exactly where it had been, and told myself not to jump to conclusions. But I already knew. I knew because this wasn't the first hint, just the first undeniable one. After my husband passed, I did what many widows do. I tried to keep the family whole by giving more than I received. I gave my son money for his down payment. Then for his new car. Then for furniture. Then for a vacation he said was essential for his mental health. I didn't mind, truly. Love makes generosity feel like a privilege. But generosity, unguarded, turns into expectation faster than most people realize. I remembered the receipts I'd kept in a drawer. Well, not a drawer anymore. They were in a blue folder now, the one I'd started filling when I began noticing a tone in his voice I didn't recognize. A tone that said, "Of course you'll help. You always do." There were receipts for the 65-inch television he insisted they needed for hosting. Receipts for the sofa set. The French door refrigerator. The microwave. The mattress. The loan payments I covered when he said work had slowed down. At the time, every purchase felt like support. Looking back, every one of them felt like erosion. By the time evening rolled in and the Christmas lights glowed softly against the windows, I had pieced together enough fragments of truth to know the shape of the whole. But I kept quiet, the way storms gather quietly before they break. When he finally arrived, much later than promised, he came in without greeting me, brushing snow off his jacket like he owned the place. His girlfriend followed, her perfume blooming through the doorway before she did. We talked. Or rather, I cooked while they talked around me. They took my kitchen chairs. They opened my fridge. They whispered in the hallway when they thought I couldn't hear. And then, while placing gifts beneath the tree, he turned and said it. That one line that will stay with me until the day my bones become dust. "No gifts for you, Mom. You need to learn a lesson." He smirked. A grown man smirking at his mother in her own home on Christmas Eve, as if punishing me was some grand, justified act. But if he thought silence meant surrender, he'd forgotten who raised him. I looked at him, at her, at the tree glowing gold behind them. And I felt something inside me settle. Not break, not shatter, not wilt. Settle. Clarity, I find, is a quiet thing. I said nothing. I simply smiled, nodded once, and let the room fall back into its soft holiday hum. He had no idea. Not yet. But he would. I didn't sleep that night, not because of anger, though it would be easy for someone listening to assume that. No, it was something else. A kind of alertness. Like the house itself had leaned forward, waiting. I sat at the kitchen table long after they'd gone upstairs, my hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea gone cold. The lights on the tree blinked faintly from the living room, little pulses of color like a heartbeat trying to keep rhythm. Every so often, I'd hear them laugh, his low chuckle, her manicured giggle. A pair of adults whispering like teenagers in a house that had held their Christmases long before they learned to whisper secrets. I wasn't listening for details. You'd be surprised how little you need to hear to understand everything. Around midnight, the house grew quiet. The floorboards stilled. The heater hummed. A few snowflakes tapped the window like shy fingers. I stood slowly, my joints complaining as they often do, and padded toward the hall closet. The blue folder was exactly where I'd kept it, tucked behind a stack of old puzzles and a sewing kit I haven't opened in years. I pulled it out and placed it on the table, smoothing the cover with my palm. It wasn't an act of spite. It was preparation, something my late husband always said was the difference between panic and poise. Life won't warn you twice, he told me once when we were young enough to think such advice was philosophical. The folder was thick now, fuller than I'd realized. Receipts nestled inside like brittle leaves. Paper curled from time. Ink faded at the edges. But each one a record of a moment I'd said yes when I should have paused. I opened it. There was the receipt for the $2,700 sofa set from when he moved into his first apartment and insisted the place looked too bare, too sad. The $300 microwave he said would make meal prep easier because he and his girlfriend were so busy trying to build a future. The installment plan for the French door refrigerator, high-end, stainless steel, more expensive than what I've ever owned. The $1,100 mattress that he needed because the old one hurt his back. The down payment on his car. The vacation to Turkey he and his girlfriend absolutely needed after what he called a hard year. Line after line. Item after item. Moment after moment. Like beads on a string, and I had threaded every one of them myself. I flipped through the pages slowly, methodically. Each turn made a soft whispering sound, as if the papers themselves were confessing something. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. Not anymore. I was simply seeing the truth without the fog of hope. A mother's love can be the most blinding light in the world. At the back of the folder, tucked behind the earliest receipts, was the email printout of his mortgage down payment, the one I had covered after selling part of my late husband's life insurance. I traced my finger along the numbers, remembering how proud he'd looked when he signed the papers. I couldn't have done this without you, he had said then, voice thick with something that almost felt like gratitude. Almost. How quickly gratitude becomes a ghost. Around 2 in the morning, I opened my laptop. The screen lit the room in a soft blue glow, making the Christmas ornaments on the tree shimmer faintly in my peripheral vision. I clicked on my email. There they were, every digital receipt I'd ever forwarded to myself for record keeping, something my husband used to remind me to do. The timestamps, the order confirmations, the digital warranties. Each one now a small piece in a puzzle I didn't know I'd be solving. Then I clicked into my Ring camera account. Years ago, when my son insisted on installing it, so we stay safe, I had agreed. He handled the setup, but I kept the login. I hadn't checked it in months beyond glancing at motion alerts. But the footage was there. Deliveries arriving. Appliances being carried in. Boxes labeled with brand names. Even one clip of him saying quietly, "Mom won't mind. She always helps." He had no idea the camera was saving more than motion. It was saving a story. At 3 in the morning, I began assembling everything. I made copies. I printed screenshots. I organized the receipts by date, then by category: electronics, furniture, appliances, vehicle payments, miscellaneous loans. I slipped each category into a plastic sleeve binder I found in the drawer where I keep old holiday menus. The binder felt heavier than its weight. Not because of the paper, but because of what it represented. Proof. The truth laid out neatly in chronological order. Factual. Unemotional. By 4, my plan had moved from feeling to form. A quiet one. A lawful one. A necessary one. I opened a new tab and began researching moving companies. Ones with good reputations, licensed and insured, who handled difficult requests without fuss. I called one, yes, at 4 in the morning. No, I wasn't ashamed, and left a message requesting a callback at a reasonable hour. My voice was steady. Then I drafted an email to the electricity company, another to the Wi-Fi provider, another to the gas service, all to notify them of my intent to reassign or cancel accounts I'd been paying for at my son's house under the assumption they'd eventually take over. Assumptions are dangerous things. By dawn, a soft gray light filled the kitchen, touching the edges of the blue folder like a kindness. I made myself another cup of tea, lavender this time, letting the steam warm my face. My reflection in the window looked older than I felt. Upstairs, Footsteps began. The murmur of voices. The sound of the shower. My son's laugh, careless, airy, floated down the stairs. I sat calmly at the table, binder closed, folder stacked neatly on top. When he entered the kitchen, he stretched like a man who'd slept well, glanced at me and said, "Breakfast." Not, "Good morning." Not, "Merry Christmas Eve morning, Mom." Not even a simple, "How'd you sleep?" Just, "Breakfast." As if I were the housemaid. "Not hungry yet," I replied with a small smile. My voice was light. My hands steady. He shrugged and opened the fridge he never helped pay for. His girlfriend followed soon after, wrapped in a blanket, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. People show themselves clearly when they don't bother to hide. I watched them chatter, eat, clatter dishes carelessly, oblivious to the fact that the world as they knew it was already shifting, inch by inch. Not out of hatred. Not out of revenge. Out of necessity. Before they went upstairs again, she said something I'll never forget, not because it was cruel, but because it was careless. She showed him something on her phone and whispered, "We're set for Bali, right?" Once she hands over the rest. Hands over the rest. The rest. As if I were a dispensary of comfort. A fund. A resource. Not a mother with her own life, her own limits, her own story. They disappeared upstairs. The door closed. Silence returned. But this time, silence wasn't my shield. It was my knife, sharp, clean, lawful. And I was ready to use it. That afternoon, the moving company called back. A cheerful man confirmed availability for the next day, Christmas Day. "I don't mind working holidays," he chuckled. "Pays better, honestly." I booked them. Calmly. Clearly. Precisely. Next, I printed the final documents. Checked the binder. Reviewed the receipts. Verified my Ring login again. Packed my small overnight bag, not because I had to leave, but because I wanted to walk into tomorrow free of anything unnecessary. By evening, Christmas Eve had never looked so quiet. But quiet does not mean empty. Sometimes quiet means action brewing under the surface like a pot just before boil. And as the clock neared midnight, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Christmas Day would not bring gifts. It would bring truth. And reclaiming. Christmas morning arrived like the hush before a snowfall. Soft, pale, expectant. You'd think a day like that would carry the warmth of childhood memories, but I felt something else entirely. Not dread. Not fear. Clarity. A clean, steady clarity that wrapped itself around me more securely than my old robe ever could. The house was still when I woke. Outside, the world was a simple watercolor of white and silver, the snow falling in slow, drifting curtains that blurred the edges of everything. The cardinal from yesterday perched again on the feeder, puffed up against the cold, its red feathers a small act of defiance against winter. I made tea, lavender again, and held the warm mug between my palms while the kettle's leftover steam faded into the air. The heating vents hummed. The refrigerator clicked. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard groaned as my son moved in his sleep. He had no idea what this day held. The moving company was scheduled to arrive at 9. I had time. Time to sit. Time to breathe. Time to let the weight of the past years settle into something manageable. Not anger. Not bitterness. Just truth. At 8, my phone buzzed with a message from the moving company confirming they were on their way. The neatness of it, the professionalism, brought me a small, unexpected comfort. Like the universe was finally clicking things back into place. I glanced at my blue folder on the table. The binder sat beneath it, thick with evidence, receipts, timestamps, screenshots, Ring footage snapshots. My quiet arsenal. All facts. No embellishments. Every page a simple statement of reality. I ran my fingers over the cover and breathed slowly. At 8:30, I heard movement upstairs. Doors opening. The low murmur of their voices. The kind of careless holiday morning chatter you'd expect from two people who believed the world revolved gently around their plans. By 8:45, footsteps came down the stairs. My son entered the kitchen, rubbing his eyes dramatically and running a hand through his hair like a teenager waking at noon. Not a grown man waking in his mother's home on Christmas morning. "You're up early," he said. "I am," I answered, stirring my tea once more though it didn't need stirring. His girlfriend appeared behind him, her hair tied up in a messy bun, wearing one of my old sweaters like it was hers. She picked up her phone and immediately began scrolling, not even glancing my way. It was astonishing, the small cruelties people commit with their eyes. "So," my son said, stretching, "we figured we'd open gifts after breakfast. I told her how you always do that first thing." He winked at his girlfriend. "And hey, don't expect anything big. We're kinda tight right now, and like I said—" "Yes," I interrupted softly. "I remember what you said." He didn't hear the weight of it. He rarely heard weight. Only what benefited him. He yawned loudly and walked to the fridge. "We should pick up the roast from your freezer at some point too. We're planning to take it home with us after dinner." "Are you?" He nodded, nonchalant. "Yeah. We'll need it for the week. Money's tight." Her voice chimed in as she poured coffee from my machine. "Remember what we talked about? Budgeting. Being firm. Setting boundaries." Funny, the irony of that statement. At 8:58, I heard a truck rumble into the driveway. A white one. The kind moving companies use. Big, clean, professional looking. Through the window, I saw two men hop out, each in matching jackets, each efficient in their stride. My heartbeat slowed, not sped. Slowed. Sometimes power feels like silence settling correctly in your bones. My son frowned. "Are you expecting someone?" "Yes," I answered calmly, standing. He glanced at the clock. "On Christmas?" "Yes." When the doorbell rang, I walked to it with the steadiness of a woman who has rehearsed her steps in her mind long before taking them in the real world. The cold swept in as I opened the door, and the movers smiled politely. "Good morning, ma'am. You must be Mrs. Hale." "Yes," I said. "Thank you for coming." "Of course. What are we moving today?" I stepped aside and gestured them in. "A list. Items I own. Large ones." The men nodded, no questions, no judgment. They'd seen everything, I'm sure. My son's voice rose behind me. "Mom, what's this?" I turned to him, still calm. "We're reclaiming my things." He blinked. "What things? What are you talking ab?" I set the binder and folder on the coffee table. "These." He walked over, opened the binder, flipped through the first few pages, and as his eyes landed on the receipts, the loan statements, the delivery confirmations, a strange thing happened. His smirk died. It didn't fade. It died. "What is this?" he said, voice too sharp to hide the tremor beneath. "Documentation," I said, "of every item I purchased, including the ones in your home." His girlfriend stepped forward, crossing her arms. "Hold on, this isn't fair. Those were gifts." "They were not gifts," I said gently. "They were loans. Support. Temporary help. And I have every proof needed to show that." She scoffed. "You can't just take things back because you're upset." "I'm not upset," I answered. "I'm reclaiming what is mine. Quietly. Lawfully. Without malice." The movers stood patiently, waiting for the cue to begin. My son shook his head, incredulous. "Mom, you can't be serious. It's Christmas." "Yes," I replied. "And what better day to return things to their rightful owner?" He swallowed hard. "This is messed up. We need those things. You know we do." "Yes. I know," I said softly. "And I know you expected me to give more. Always more. Because you've been taught that my love equals my willingness to erase myself." His mouth opened, but no words came out. I took the list from the binder and handed it to the head mover. We'll start with the 65-inch television, the French door refrigerator, and the sofa set. The girlfriend exploded. You can't take our fridge. It's not yours, I said simply. She turned on my son. Say something. He did, finally. Mom, you're supposed to help us. I met his eyes, the same eyes he had as a child, the ones that used to widen with wonder at Christmas lights, at bedtime stories, at the world. I've helped you, I said, voice barely above a whisper. And in return, you told me I needed to learn a lesson. That I didn't deserve a gift. That you deserved my money, not me. His face paled. He knew. He remembered the note in the suitcase, I think, because guilt flickered across his features like a sudden shadow. I didn't mean. You meant it enough to say it, I said. And your actions confirmed the rest. The movers began working, quiet and professional, lifting the television first, wrapping it, securing it. My son stood frozen, watching as the life he'd built on the foundation of my sacrifices began to dismantle piece by piece. Mom, stop them, he finally choked out. Please. I won't, I said softly. Not today. Why are you doing this? Because love does not mean erasing myself. And because today, I choose to stop allowing you to take from me what you feel entitled to. The girlfriend hissed. This is ridiculous. We'll call the police. You may, I offered gently. I welcome it. She froze then. Because confidence frightens the guilty. The men continued moving things out one by one. Television, refrigerator, sofa. Each item handled carefully, respectfully. I checked each off the list. The blue folder remained on the table, silent witness to years of imbalance finally being corrected. My son collapsed onto a chair, one I had not purchased, thankfully, and covered his face with his hands. I didn't think you'd actually do something like this, he whispered through his fingers. I know, I replied. That was the problem. He looked up at me then, eyes rimmed red, voice small in a way that pricked something deep inside me. But I did not bend. Not this time. Christmas morning unfolded with the quiet choreography of reclamation. Each item lifted and carried out like a truth finally spoken aloud. No yelling. No chaos. Just the steady work of people doing what must be done. By noon, the last piece was loaded. The movers handed me the final checklist. I signed, thanked them, and watched the truck pull away. My son stood in the doorway, defeated but still confused, still trying to process the reality that a mother's love is not infinite fuel. It didn't have to be like this, he whispered. I touched the doorframe gently, feeling its worn edges beneath my fingertips. No, I said. It didn't. And with that, I stepped out into the cold, clean air, locking the door behind me. Tomorrow, I would face the law to confirm everything. But today I had reclaimed more than furniture. I had reclaimed myself. The living room was dim except for the warm flicker of the fireplace. Outside, snow drifted lazily, settling like powdered sugar over the sleeping neighborhood. Christmas Eve had quieted, but inside my home, something deeper, heavier, and more permanent had begun shifting. Mark stood frozen near the staircase, his face pale, his bravado gone. His phone still lay where it had slipped from his hand. Jenna remained curled on the couch, arms wrapped tightly around herself, eyes red and unfocused. She looked small, almost fragile, yet the sharpness in her earlier words still echoed through the walls like splinters. I sat across from them, my breathing slow, steady, yet undeniably trembling beneath the surface. My heart ached, but it was no longer the helpless ache of a mother pleading for affection. It was the ache of someone who finally sees the truth clearly. The kind of truth that doesn't break you. It frees you. I folded my hands in my lap. Sit down, Mark. He swallowed hard and obeyed, sinking into the armchair, his posture deflated. For the first time since he was a teenager, he looked like a boy again. Lost, confused, caught in something he hadn't expected. You said I need to learn a lesson, I began softly. Mark flinched, shame coloring his cheeks. He opened his mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. No. Let me finish. He nodded, silent. This wasn't just about a gift, I continued. It wasn't just about forgetting me tonight. This was about the years you've been pulling away. The years you've allowed resentment to replace love, convenience to replace effort, and other people's opinions to replace your own relationship with me. I turned my gaze toward Jenna, who quickly looked down, guilt unraveling across her face. When you two planned a Christmas Eve without me, I didn't cry because I was alone, I said. I cried because the son I raised, who I loved, fed, protected, and sacrificed for, looked me in the eyes and didn't see a mother worth celebrating. A single tear slipped from Mark's eye, and he wiped it quickly, as if trying to hide it. I heard everything, I added quietly. Every word on that recording. Not by choice, but because you placed it where I would hear it. Mark shut his eyes. Mom, I didn't mean. But you did. My voice wasn't angry. It was steady, painful, honest. And now we have to face the consequences of what you meant. Silence spread like fog around us. Jenna shifted slightly. Mrs. Lawson, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how cruel. You didn't realize because you didn't care, I replied calmly. You thought I was old, inconvenient, a burden. You thought you could take my son and mold him into someone completely detached from his own mother. Jenna's breath hitched. I swear I didn't want to. But you did. I leaned back, exhaling deeply. And Mark allowed it. That's the difference. Mark's head dropped. The fireplace crackled softly, like punctuation between the slow, unraveling truths. I stood and walked toward the small wooden box beneath the tree, a box that Mark hadn't noticed earlier. I lifted it carefully and brought it to him. This was your Christmas gift, I said. A new watch. The one you've wanted since summer. Mark stared at the box, tears blurring his eyes. Mom, why? I held it out, then slowly placed it on the coffee table instead of handing it to him. You said I didn't deserve a gift. And for the first time in my life, I realized, you don't deserve this one. His mouth opened in shock. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't being dramatic. I was simply acknowledging reality. Love isn't one-sided, I said. Respect isn't optional. You don't get to belittle me and still expect me to keep giving, and giving, and giving. Mark wiped his face with both hands, breaking down. Mom, please. I'm so sorry. I was stupid. I let Jenna talk me into things. I didn't think it would hurt you like this. That's the problem, I replied. You didn't think at all. Jenna stood abruptly. Mark, she's twisting. No, Mark snapped, his voice sharp, sudden, and startling. No, she's not twisting anything. I messed up. I became someone I don't even recognize. For the first time all night, he looked directly into Jenna's eyes. I let you convince me my mother was the enemy, he said. I let you push me and I followed blindly. But this is my fault. Jenna stepped back as if struck. My heart twisted, not from pain this time but from the faint, fragile stirrings of hope. Maybe this moment was necessary. Maybe the truth was finally breaking through. I never asked for anything, I whispered. I never demanded gifts or attention. All I ever wanted was to be included, to be treated with the kindness you give strangers, the respect you give co-workers, the patience you give everyone except me. Mark covered his face, shoulders shaking. I moved closer, resting a hand near, but not on his arm. I'm not cutting you out of my life, Mark, I said. But I'm stepping back until you figure out what kind of son you want to be. His head snapped up, fear flooding his expression. Mom, please don't do that. I'll do better. I swear. Just don't give up on me. I'm not giving up, I said gently. I'm giving you space to grow. Jenna looked between us, her confidence shattered. Mark, Are you really going to let her? Mark stood, his voice calmer now. Jenna, I think you should go. Her eyes widened. What? Mark. You heard me. His voice was final. I need to fix things with my mother. And I can't do that with you tearing her down. Jenna grabbed her purse, furious. Fine. But don't expect me to be here when you change your mind. She stormed toward the door, slamming it behind her. The echoes faded. Mark collapsed onto the couch, burying his face in his hands again. Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why I let it get this far. I sat beside him, not touching, but close enough for him to feel the warmth of forgiveness waiting. You lost your way, I said softly. But you haven't lost me. He turned toward me, his eyes swollen and desperate. Please, let me earn your forgiveness. You already started, I replied. Tonight. By finally seeing me. He reached for my hand like he used to when he was little, tentative, hopeful. For the first time in years, I didn't pull away. Let's rebuild, I said. Slowly. Honestly. Mark nodded, tears slipping silently down his cheeks. I want that more than anything. And as we sat together in the quiet glow of the Christmas lights, I realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't wrapped at all. Sometimes, it's the moment someone finally learns the lesson you were too hurt to teach, and chooses you anyway. This Christmas Eve, I didn't lose my son. I reclaimed him.